Whoa, Guardians, 8 days left until Edge of Fate. Let me say, I'm so glad we finished up all of the weapon tier lists and rankings that I wanted to do, right? We are moving into exotic armor, which I think is going to be even more difficult and divisive and confusing than any of the weapons list was. Exotics are sacred to some people. They are defining features of you as a guardian. So if your favorite is not on this list, which is going to be hunter exotics today, I apologize. I don't necessarily think all of these are bad. There's very few exotics that I think are just outright bad, but there's also very few that I consider to be outright strong. So I have a couple of honorable mentions, and then we're going to do top 10. The top 10 are not going to be in order, all right? They are just 10 different things that I have picked that I think are strong, and I can't really put an order on them because they are just so flexible, and there's a lot of situations where you want to be switching these out. So I couldn't really pin down a ranking for these armors, so that's what I'm going to be doing for all these exotic armor lists. They are not going to be ranked. I do want to start with our honorable mentions, so we're going to have 3 honorable mentions in these, and our first one's going to be Omnioculus. It is a Void Hunter exotic for Night Stalker when you're using Trapper's Ambush. So it is based on giving your teammates invisibility, and that's about it. It is not flexible, but it is very powerful, where turning your teammates invisible will give you smoke bomb energy. Typically, every teammate you turn invisible will give you 50% of your charge. So if you turn 2 teammates invisible, you get a whole charge back. This is just enough for you to be in a 3-man fire team and always have a smoke bomb to turn invis. You also get a second charge, which is nice in the scenarios where you need to turn you and one person invisible, or you just miss people or something happens like that. You have a backup one. And in raid scenarios where you're turning potentially 5 other people invisible, you can fill up both charges on an empty charge. Now, the other advantage of turning invisible with Omnioculus is anybody who you turn invisible, or whenever you are invisible, this will work on any way of turning invisible. So Rat King, Stylish Executioner, this will all proc for you. You will get up to 50% damage resist for you and your teammates. You're not typically getting shot while you're invis, but this can save you if your teammates like in a fire puddle while you're turning them invisible, or their grenade lands nearby, or something like that happens. An enemy just gets antsy and shoots at your invisible teammate, because that does happen. This can save your life in endgame. Nobody really complains when you see an Omni Hunter in endgame, so it's deserving of a spot in this list, but it's not like the most potent thing. It's not going to clear a GM for you, but as long as you are a competent player and you know what you're doing to some degree, and you have decent enough weapons, this will keep you and your team safe. My second honorable mention goes to Radiant Dance Machines, and this is a weird one. I feel like I'm stretching with this maybe a little bit, but with its recent rework, getting kills with primary weapons will give you 33% of your class ability energy until it fills up your bar. And then getting up to 3 multi-kills will get you an extra charge, up to 2 extra charges. So it's all about using primary weapons and using class ability. There's this very like niche type of build that you can do with something like Barrow Dyad, Outbreak, Kvostov, or other really high damage primaries, with something like Prismatic Hunter, where you can do Ascension into Threaded Spectre so that you fly up into the air and leave a clone in the air that enemies will shoot if they're within a certain radius, and you'll have multiple charges. But because Threaded Spectre increases your cooldown, you can bypass that with Radiant Dance Machines. And I have to admit, like, it's a pretty strong build. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the most fun build to play all the time. It can feel kind of weird, and then sometimes the enemies just don't shoot the clone. So it's very fun and it's potent when it works, but it's not like crazy power that a lot of the other exotics can tend to have. Like, this is no Syntheseps. Like, I'm not gonna glaze it, right? But it is unique and interesting. If you want to make plays with Acrobat's Dodge, or you want to make plays with Threaded Spectre, this is a nice thing to try and work with and see what you can do. And for my last honorable mention, this might be something that a lot of you might expect to see in the top 10. I'm giving it an honorable mention because it got nerfed recently. It's not technically like as high in the meta anymore, but it is still very strong, very fun to use. It's just, you get locked into a certain play style, right? This is Lucky Pants. While you are using Lucky Pants, when you pull out a fully loaded hand cannon, you get a buff where your damage ramps up every shot up to 10 shots and caps out, I think it's 500% right now, which is very strong on almost any hand cannon, including exotic hand cannons and Ariana's Vow. Now, once you have 10 seconds of that, you then lose the buff, and you have to wait 10 seconds for it to come off cooldown. so you then just basically don't have an exotic, and you're running a hand cannon. It is very fun and it's very potent. It's weaker than it was. It's not as great for damage rotations as it used to be. It's not a champion deleter that it used to be. But we have stronger hand cannons than we used to, so I think it kind of makes up for it. And this is still a very fun thing to play around. You are no longer locked into having element matching for it to work. So you can run, Sunshot on Arc and get that bonus, or you could run 2-round burst Strand hand cannon. It's unloved on Solar and be Radiant to get the bonus with that. So yeah, very flexible, very fun. Not the most potent thing to totally build around at all times, but I think it deserves to be in your repertoire for endgame. So like I said, there's no particular order to this list. So I'm starting you off with Celestial Nighthawk. It is the shoe-in for Hunter. Everybody knows what Nighthawk does. If you don't, you pop Golden Gun, and instead of firing 3 shots that slowly ramp up damage, you get 1 shot, and its damage is massively increased to be better than hitting all 3 of those shots would have been. So you have a very high damage super. It is 1 shot, very fast to use, extremely high DPS. There is a bonus if you're using this on things like champions or majors or something else that just gets in the way. If you get a kill with that shot, you do get 30% of your super back. And there is a new, I say new, it's more recently added, getting headshot kills gives you more super energy, which will get buffed, hopefully, in Edge of Fate to make the neutral game of Nighthawk a little bit stronger. This is the I'm doing a raid boss exotic for Hunter, because if you want to do DPS, you put this on, you activate Golden Gun before damage starts, you get Radiant, damage starts, you fire the shot, and then you just do normal heavy things. And it's the best in the game. Comparable with, Cuirass. Cuirass has a little bit more of, you have to travel to do it, you have to make sure it's timed perfectly. So a little bit easier to use, a little bit safer. I can't talk bad about Nighthawk. Works on Prismatic, great. Works on Solar, great. My second pick for the top 10 for Hunters is another super exotic and another one from D2 Year 1. Both of these are base. I have these organized by release right now, so that's how I'm going to be going through them. But this is a base game exotic, as was Celestial Nighthawk. You can acquire these from exotic engrams, and you can focus them from 0 if you get them ramped up. Origs is for Tether on Void. This is a Void exotic. You have 2 versions of Tether. There is the 3-shot that will fire a 3-prong attack that has a lot of tracking, and then you can get a 2nd shot that will fire 3 more. They will do more damage to a target that's already weakened by Tether, and Mobius Quiver will give you a additional shot on that. So this gives Void Hunter a bit of a burst damage super. You can also run Star Eaters to get that kind of effect, but this is just something that is a bit more flexible if you don't want to go for damage. If you did want to weaken a lot of enemies and you wanted to spread it out, that gives you this flexibility there. But really, the main reason most people use Orpheus Rigs, the main reason I love Orpheus Rigs, is the part where when you use Deadfall, you get ability energy for every enemy tethered. It does say ability energy, and to clarify, that is your grenade, your melee, your class ability, and your super energy. It used to fully refund your super, and it was extremely broken back then, and I miss it so much, Bungie. Can I have it back? But it will get you 50% of your super back after tethering like 10 enemies. Sometimes it's less. It might vary depending on the rank of the enemy. It's hard to tell sometimes because you'll feel like you tether 3 enemies and get the whole thing back, and other times you'll tether like 5 guys and get nothing back. So it's a little bit inconsistent. That's just how the super regen exotics are sometimes. But if you have run Void Hunter or you've played with the Void Hunter, Deadfall is no joke. In Grandmaster content or strikes or anything where there's a lot of ads or enemies nearby, you can throw Deadfall out to basically flashbang an entire room, and it will last an incredibly long time. It will increase the damage they take by 30%, and it will share the damage they take to other enemies that are nearby. It has always been one of the most consistent options for Hunter, and that continues to this day. And the 30% debuff does really stack up. It is a pivotal part of Endgame. Next, from Beyond Light, we have a representative Star Eater Scales. If you have Beyond Light installed, you can get Star Eaters, which have the benefit of while you pick up orbs while your super is full, you can pick up to 6 to get 70% bonus damage on any super. So this is about equal strength, a little bit less than Nighthawk on Golden Gun, but you can use it with any other super as well. Blade Barrage, Deadshot, Strand, Stasis, anything you can think of will get that damage bonus. The other effect, which is the part that the other classes don't get, is that we get to get extra orb energy for every orb you pick up. It is nerfed on Golden Gun, so I am sorry if you remember using this with Golden Gun to, infinitely spam golden guns with a team of hunters with star eaters. That has been nerfed. It doesn't work anymore. So if you're on golden gun, you don't really get much more super energy per hit, and I think that's really disappointing. I would have preferred to see that nerfed in some other way. If you are on a class that is not 3-shot golden gun, you get 2% extra super energy per orb. Now, obviously, every orb you pick up gives a different amount of super energy. So the weakest ones, which are like attrition orbs, are about 1%. You will get an additional 2% on top of that, basically tripling how much you get per orb. Or if it's a super orb that's normally 7%, you will get 9%. These are not small changes. And especially once we get into the new expansion, and this is going to be 50% more, you're going to be getting 3% per orb. If you think of attrition orbs on something like Velocity Baton, you could pick up, 6 orbs in 4 or 5 seconds. And lucky for you, the damage bonus also stacks earlier in the stacks. So getting about 4 stacks is almost as good as 6 stacks most of the time. If you're using this just to cycle supers, you can spawn a lot of orbs for your teammates in your super to give them their super, and then when they pop their super, they can go around and do super things, get super kills, and they'll spawn more super orbs, which gets you your super back even faster. So you can kind of do this kind of cycle thing where you just make a ton of orbs for your teammates and you all cycle supers, which is a very fun playstyle to have. A lot of people don't build into super generation or orb creation, so just a fun thing to think of. This is consistently a powerful option in raids, dungeons, and endgame nightfalls as well, but it doesn't directly boost a class very much. Next up, we have Liar's Handshake. This is an Arc Hunter classic exotic. You can use it on Prismatic. It is on the exotic class item as well, but the regular version for Arc or Prismatic is while you're using Combination Blow. It is any Arc melee, but we're using it for Combination Blow because that stacks melee damage and refunds itself pretty much instantly. While you use your Arc melee, getting a hit with it will charge up a counterpunch where your next hit does triple damage. If you get meleeed, it will also make your next punch cause triple damage. This stacks ridiculously well. In addition, this version of it, the main exotic, will also heal you for about 80 health, meaning this is a sustaining exotic and a damage exotic. You do have to commit pretty hard to use Liars in endgame. It was kind of this on-off thing with Arc Hunter if you would use Liars or another exotic that we're going to talk about later. But on Prismatic, you can afford to take Liars because you have so much sustain with invisibility and being able to pick up orbs for restoration or recovery, depending on your super element. Going into Edge of Fate, it should be pretty equal to the damage you're doing now if you have that 200 melee stat. The next exotic I want to talk about is from Lightfall. This is Triton Vice. Strange pick. A lot of you probably don't use glaives very much. I also did not use glaives very much for a while. However, this thing is basically Syntheseps for Hunter, and it turns glaives into very strong melee options, even into late endgame. With the exotic glaives getting buffs, the class ones have all these really cool options, including healing, a Titan bubble, more damage, or you could use Vexcalibur, which will give you overshields and more melee damage. This is a great combo just to make the shooting of those glaives more powerful, as well as making your melee more powerful. And going into Edge of Fate with the melee changes, this could be really strong, or it could get gutted because of the glaive melee nerf. Not totally sure how that's going to wind up, but this feels really good right now. So right now it's on this top 10 list. We'll have to see how it changes in Edge of Fate. But if you haven't played Hunter Glaive, you can put it on with Stylish, and the glaives will proc the weaken effect on the melee hit. So you can do that kind of either a void build or a prismatic build with Triton Vice, and it is very fun. Next up from Shadowkeep, we have Assassin's Cowl. You have to finish the campaign to pick this one up. It's not a focusable one. You've got to do the campaign. Now, Assassin's Cowl is flexible. It works on any subclass. It doesn't make your class any more powerful by itself, but if you're able to build into melee in some way, or you're able to kind of build in the finishers and get off a lot of finishers, it can be a very powerful effect on classes that need healing. The main thing it does is it gives you invis on a melee or finisher kill, and it will also give you healing on top of that. Now, the more powerful the target, the more invis and health you get. Finishers are better than melee kills. Traditionally, we are using this on Arc Hunter because Arc Hunter melee is so strong that Liar's Handshake was overkill in a lot of endgame scenarios where using Liars would just two-shot a champion, but using Assassin's Cowl without Liars, you would still two-shot or maybe just three-shot a champion and it was pretty comparable. However, even on something like Strand, Grapple Melee counts as a melee and can proc Assassin's Cowl. Threaded Spike is a decent melee that can proc this. Solar Hunter has some good melees. The main issue with Assassin's Cowl and melee builds on Hunter is Hunter has to work a little bit more to get a melee that will really contribute to getting kills very often, compared to something like Titan that has a lot of built-in melee damage buffs. Hunter doesn't have that. But we do have a lot of interesting melees that you can build around, and you can go for finishers and do something like Strand Hunter finisher build with the Threadlings. Weird, strange pick, I know. But even on Prismatic, where we get a lot of melee energy from doing Transcendence and playing Combination Blow, where you have other options to just buff your damage a little bit with your abilities, Assassin's Cowl is not a bad pick anywhere in the game. Now, I want to talk about a couple of Final Shape exotics, and by when I say a couple, I think you'll understand what I mean. Starting off, we're using Gifted Conviction here. Gifted Conviction is an arc-based exotic. You get increased damage resist whenever you jolt a target. In addition, your Ascension and your Tempest Strike aspects are enhanced to throw little tiny projectiles that will, in addition to the jolting effect of the abilities, cause their own bit of jolt. So Gifted Conviction will scale up how much damage resist you have based on how many jolts you apply within a close range. It's about 15 meters. For 1 jolt, you'll get resist times 2, 2 jolts will be resist times 3, and 3 jolts will be resist times 4. That is 25, 40, and 50% damage resist for those stacks. These stacks last for 10 seconds, they'll all fall off at once, but as long as you're able to consistently apply jolt to a new target, you will consistently build up more and more damage resist. This is very popular with Ascension right now. Even with just an arc weapon that will naturally jolt, this can be a very strong pairing. From episode Revenant, we have Mask of Fealty. This is another one for the Final Shape, so if you don't have it, you'll need to grab that to go ahead and pick this up. This is a stasis-based exotic. It is a very offensive one compared to the other ones hunters have. Thank God we finally needed one. This makes it so that your stasis melees on their first and third bounce will spawn a stasis crystal. That means your stasis melee, instead of slowing on hit, will freeze on hit for hits 1 and 3. Mainly for the first hit's what matters, right? That crystal will freeze instantly when it spawns. And then if you hit a target that is frozen or is a stasis crystal, that target will explode and send out more stasis melees from it. Those can make crystals, they can freeze, they can slow, but they provide some bonus damage, and that's mostly what you're using it for. I really like it for just being able to freeze on demand. Building into freeze more on Hunter is something that I really wanted to do, so this lets you build into freeze a lot more on both Prismatic and regular stasis. In addition, the hits will give you a little bit of melee energy. We're talking like a couple percentage points per hit. Nothing to really rejoice about, but I think with the buffs coming up to strength later, if you're building into strength with this, they'll probably be a lot more significant. So definitely keep an eye on it going into Edge of Fate, and it's definitely a fun one to use with Icebreaker. And for the Witch Queen, we have Gear Falcons. Gear Falcons is a classic exotic. We've had a lot of Void Hunter exotics on this list. This is the Volatile Rounds exotic. Originally, it wasn't so much. It was a damage boost exotic, and it got out of hand in Crucible, so they changed it. You no longer get the damage boost just for breaking out of Invis. You get Volatile Rounds whenever you leave invisibility. Pair this with Stylus Executioner on both Prismatic or regular Void, and when you break invisibility, your weapons will spawn volatile rounds. They will do volatile explosions on enemies, and if you kill an enemy that is volatile, you will trigger Stylish and go invisible again. So you have this just built-in perpetual loop of being able to go in and out of invis as long as you can kill an enemy in under 10 seconds. There is this whole extra bonus part of this where if you do a finisher while you're invisible, you will give you and your teammates this reserve overshield buff. While you have that buff, your class ability gets really great recharge speed to cap out and fill it up. When you cast your ability, you will give yourself, or your teammates will give themselves, a regular Void Overshield on top of their health. It is a strong effect. Void Overshields aren't a joke anymore. It's very strong, but it's very wonky to play around. You have to weaken a target normally, then go invis, then finish them, and if you have the fragment that turns you invisible when you get a finisher and put you back in invis, then you have to break it again, which will give you volatile rounds again. But the damage buff is 5 seconds, so in the time it takes you to do the finisher and come out of the animation, you've already lost a second or two. Really weird and clunky because it also, like I said, gives you a damage buff. And the overshields are not something you're playing around. And if you have an overshield, you don't get another reserve overshield until it's over sometimes, is what it feels like. You're using this for volatile rounds. It lets Void Hunter be very aggressive. Bolt rounds is really strong if you are spreading it to multiple enemies at once and then detonating it, but it'll increase your damage with any void weapon. The last one I want to talk about for this video is going to be Renewal Grasps. Renewal Grasps is an older stasis exotic. It's kind of funny, I have two stasis exotics in here as well. Renewal Grasp is recently unnerved, and going into Edge of Fate with the buffs to grenades, this is going to be even more interesting to run. This is a defensive exotic that, for throwing your Dusk Field, you can get an enemy in the field and it will give them 50% reduced damage, which is basically severing them or giving yourself Woven Mail, right? On top of that, if you or an ally enters your Dusk Field, you get rapidly stacks of Frost Armor. So it used to be you just get damage just while you're in it, and when you left it, you lost it. Now you can carry the Frost Armor out of there, so this can quickly build you DR or help you maintain your DR if you're playing Stasis. In addition to those effects, it improves your Dusk Field so that it gives a small Stasis Crystal and it has a much larger AoE. This will stack with the Stasis aspect that improves your Dusk Field grenades to give you a big crystal and an even bigger AoE. Dusk Fields are not bad grenades. You know, they don't do damage much by themselves, but shattering enemies is very strong ever since they got buffed in Revenant. So these got a offensive buff just inherently with Stasis getting buffed. You are losing the anti-unstop with this, but what are you going to do? That's just kind of what Stasis is facing as in general as an element. But these are really fun to play with. You can build into grenade regen, but even with just Whisper of Shards, you will have all but 100% uptime on your grenades. And if you put Whisper on Torment on top of that, or you're running something like Demolitionist, or you have Innervation on your boots, or you have Firepower, just about anything that can give you just a little bit more grenade energy, you will have permanent uptime on Dusk Fields, on Frost Armor, and if you're throwing it on top of an enemy, the damage resist. Now, a fun thing about this is if you do throw this onto an enemy and you are standing in the field with them, they will deal 50% reduced damage. You will take about 50% reduced damage, and you can stack any, concussion mods on there or losing resilience in the future. But right now, resilience on top of that, and you can get some absurd levels of DR just for standing in it at the same time as the enemy. I know there's a lot of exotics, obviously, I didn't touch on. Things like Foe Tracer, Mechaneers, Ahamkara's Spine, things like Gwisten got some buffs. Moth Keepers are pretty fun. There are a lot of really fun exotics that you can build into. I don't want to say that those are not great, but these are really easy to build into. I think they're very competent in endgame. You don't have to think too hard about what you're going to do for these. Mask of Bacchus in the expansion might be getting a really great rework with getting class ability energy actually after a kill, and working on Stasis and Arc, and with Lord of Wolves. So this is something there's things to pay attention to, but we will talk about Edge of Fate exotics once Edge of Fate is out and we get to play with it a little bit more. If you enjoyed this list, let me know down below. If you had something else that you really like to build into, this is more endgame focused. So there are a lot of things that I think are fun in lower end content like Calibans that I think if you love building into that, hell yeah, man, this thing's awesome. So let me know down below. Can't wait to talk to you guys again. We're going to move into Warlock Exotic Armor next. Look out for that one tomorrow, and I will see you guys again very, very soon.